Ambassador Ryland adjusted his collar one last time before entering the conference hall. 12 years of diplomatic service had taught him to read a room within seconds, and this one reeked of predetermined outcomes. The Galactic Council representatives sat in their elevated positions, arranged in a perfect semicircle that looked down upon the human delegation like judges presiding over criminals. Thessa, the Avian Council speaker, preened her violet feathers with deliberate slowness, a calculated display of indifference that spoke volumes about how this negotiation would proceed. Ambassador Ryland, please be seated. Thessa's voice carried the musical quality of her species, but the words held all the warmth of a funeral dirge. We have prepared what we believe to be generous terms for continued human participation in galactic affairs. Ryland took his seat without comment. His team of 5 human diplomats followed suit, their faces professionally neutral. 3 previous negotiation cycles had led to this moment, each one progressively worse than the last. What had started as discussions about trade regulations had somehow morphed into demands for territorial concessions. Drennick, a massive reptilian counselor with scales that shimmered bronze under the station lights, leaned forward with obvious satisfaction. Humanity has expanded too rapidly across 17 systems in the past decade. His forked tongue flickered between sentences. Such aggressive colonization disrupts the careful balance we have maintained for 3 centuries. We colonized uninhabited systems, Ryland replied evenly. Systems your own surveys deemed worthless for supporting your member species' biology. Irrelevant, Thessa interrupted, her taloned hand waving dismissively. Expansion itself creates instability. Therefore, we require humanity to surrender administrative control of 40% of your colony worlds to council oversight. The number landed like a physical blow. Ryland heard one of his junior diplomats inhale sharply. 40% meant abandoning 6 colonies, displacing millions of humans who had built lives on those worlds. Additionally, Drennick continued, clearly enjoying himself, humanity must accept genetic modification restrictions. Your tendency to adapt to hostile environments through biological augmentation sets a dangerous precedent. Ryland's jaw tightened. The modifications Drennick referenced were voluntary procedures that allowed humans to survive on high-gravity worlds or tolerate radiation levels that would kill most galactic species. Restricting them would effectively trap humanity in a handful of Earth-like environments. Furthermore, Thessa added, producing a data tablet that glowed with dense text, Earth will host 3 permanent council oversight facilities. Your military fleet will be reduced by 75%, and all human trade vessels must submit to random inspections at council checkpoints. The demands kept coming, each one more invasive than the last. Restrictions on human technological development, mandatory quotas for employing council species in human corporations, surrendering voting rights in the Galactic Assembly for a probationary period of 50 years. The list went on for 20 minutes. When Thessa finally finished, she sat back with obvious satisfaction. These terms are final. We have been more than patient with humanity's disruptive influence. This is your opportunity to demonstrate you can function as responsible members of the galactic community. Ryland looked down at the data tablet they had provided. The text swam before his eyes, not from difficulty reading but from the sheer audacity of what they were demanding. Humanity had never threatened anyone, never seized territory belonging to others, never broken a single treaty. Yet here sat the Council, treating Earth like a rebellious province that needed to be brought to heel. The silence stretched. Ryland read through every demand twice, making sure he understood the full scope of what they expected. His team waited, knowing better than to speak before their lead negotiator. The council members shifted in their seats, their initial confidence giving way to uncertainty as the quiet extended past 5 minutes. Finally, Ryland stood. He carefully collected the data tablets, stacking them with deliberate precision. His team rose with him, moving in perfect synchronization. They had not discussed this possibility, but years of working together meant they anticipated his decision. We reject these terms, Ryland's voice carried across the chamber with absolute finality. We reject them entirely. Drennick's laugh boomed through the hall. You reject them. You have no choice, human. Your economy depends on galactic trade routes. Your colonies are surrounded by our territories. This negotiation is a courtesy we extend because we are civilized. We can enforce compliance if necessary. Other council members nodded agreement. Coral, the insectoid trade minister, clicked his mandibles in what passed for his species' version of amusement. Ambassador Ryland, please be reasonable. You cannot simply refuse and expect different results. You are correct, Ryland replied, gathering the last of his materials. We cannot expect different results, which is why this negotiation is over. He turned toward the exit. His team fell in behind him without hesitation. Wait, Thessa called out, her musical voice losing some of its composure. You cannot simply leave. Where is your counter-proposal? Surely you wish to negotiate specific terms. Ryland paused at the doorway. He looked back at the assembled council members, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. They genuinely believed humanity had no choice, genuinely thought Earth would accept any terms rather than face isolation. They had mistaken human patience for weakness, diplomatic courtesy for desperation. We came to these negotiations in good faith, Ryland said quietly. We came prepared to discuss reasonable compromises on issues of genuine concern. You came with ultimatums designed to subjugate us. Humanity will remember who our friends are in the galaxy. He paused, letting his next words carry weight. And we will remember who are not. Do not contact us again, he continued, unless you wish to negotiate as equals rather than as masters addressing servants. We will not participate in the charade of pretending this was ever a negotiation. With that, he walked out. The door sealed behind the human delegation with a soft hiss that sounded impossibly loud in the stunned silence they left behind. Within 2 hours, every human ship departed Concordia Station. Within 6 hours, all human ambassadors across council space received recall orders. Within 12 hours, humanity severed every official communication channel with the Galactic Council. The Council convened an emergency session that same evening. The majority opinion held that humanity would return within days, perhaps a week at most. They needed the Council's trade networks, needed the security of Council-patrolled space, needed the legitimacy that galactic recognition provided. But 3 days passed with no contact from Earth. Intelligence reports began filtering in about unusual human activity. Trade ships rerouting to avoid Council space entirely. Merchant vessels canceling long-term contracts with Council worlds. Human cargo suddenly disappearing from major trade hubs. On the 5th day, a military observer brought news that made even Drennick's scales pale. Every human warship along the Council borders had gone dark, their stations broadcasting only automated warnings about restricted space. Defensive platforms that had stood dormant for years were now fully activated and crewed. Thessa stood at the observation window of her private quarters, watching ships come and go from Concordia Station. Somewhere out there, humanity was preparing for something. Whether it was simple isolation or something more concerning, she could not say. What she did know with growing certainty was that the Council had made a terrible miscalculation. They had treated humanity like a minor species desperate for acceptance. They had forgotten that Earth had survived and thrived long before making contact with galactic civilization. The humans had walked away, and for the first time in her long career, Thessa wondered if they would ever walk back. Trade Administrator Fennec had spent 30 years managing commerce between 17 species, and never once had his morning reports caused him genuine alarm. Today, staring at the holographic displays floating above his desk, he felt something uncomfortably close to panic. The numbers made no sense, or rather, they made perfect sense in the worst possible way. Human trade volume had dropped 60% in just 2 weeks, not canceled with angry messages or broken contracts, simply allowed to expire naturally. Merchants from Earth and the colonies responded to renewal offers with polite declinations, always professional, never providing specific reasons. "We appreciate your past business, but we will not be renewing at this time," became the standard response across 100 different trade relationships. Fennec pulled up sector-by-sector analysis. Agricultural imports from New Terra had ceased entirely. Vrelian farms that depended on human fertilizer compounds faced crop failures within months. Medical supplies from Mars Orbital Complex, previously shipped to 40 Council worlds, now redirected to non-Council destinations. The advanced ceramic composites that human manufacturers produced better than anyone else in the galaxy had stopped flowing to Council shipyards. What disturbed Fennec most was the pattern's deliberate nature. Humans were not retaliating or making angry gestures. They were simply disengaging, quietly and completely. Corporations dissolved partnerships with generous severance packages. Research institutions ended joint projects while ensuring Council scientists could finish their current work. Even human students attending Council universities were withdrawing, though they completed their current semesters before leaving. "They are being professional about abandoning us," Fennec muttered to his empty office. He compiled his findings into an emergency brief and requested an immediate council session. 3 hours later, he stood before the assembled representatives, projecting economic data that painted an increasingly dire picture. 17 Council worlds face immediate economic disruption, Fennec explained, highlighting affected systems on a galactic map. Another 34 will experience significant problems within 6 months. The humans have been quietly building alternative trade networks for years, relationships we never noticed because we assumed they would always need us more. Coral's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation in his species. "This is temporary posturing. They will return once they realize the cost of isolation." "They are not isolated," Fennec replied, bringing up new data. "Human trade with non-Council species has increased 40% in the same 2-week period. They are not stopping trade, they are redirecting it away from us specifically." Thessa studied the projections with growing concern. What about joint defense initiatives? Surely they have not withdrawn from security cooperation. Defense Coordinator Arvis, a 4-armed species known for tactical brilliance, rose from his seat. "They have withdrawn completely. Every human vessel assigned to joint patrol zones has returned to human space. Our intelligence sharing agreement has been terminated. They no longer report pirate activity in sectors they monitor." "That is irresponsible," Drennick growled. "Pirate attacks will increase without human surveillance." "They have increased," Arvis replied grimly. 4 incidents in the past week alone. The Vrelian colony of Kelmer Prime was raided 2 days ago. 30 civilians killed, significant material losses. I requested human assistance under our mutual defense protocols. There. Response was delivered within the hour. He projected the message for all to see. Brief, formal, devastating in its implications. As the Galactic Council has not formalized alliance status with humanity, and as Vrelian space falls under Council protection rather than human jurisdiction, we must respectfully decline intervention in Council territory. We wish you success in addressing this security matter. The chamber erupted in argument. Voices overlapped in a dozen languages, translators struggling to keep pace. Accusations flew between delegates. Hardliners insisted humanity was bluffing and would return humbled. Moderates warned they had gravely underestimated human resolve. Economic representatives demanded immediate reconciliation before their worlds suffered further. Fennec waited for the chaos to subside before delivering his final piece of news. "There is more. Intelligence reports indicate 3 minor species have signed comprehensive trade agreements with humanity in the past week. The Torellians, Vorash Collective, and Benthic Consortium. None are Council members. All 3 had petitioned for Council membership repeatedly over the past 20 years. Those species are economically insignificant," Drennick dismissed. "What do we care about human arrangements with minor players?" "The agreements include mutual defense clauses and technology sharing provisions," Fennec continued. Humanity is building an alternative power structure. They are offering partnership to species the Council ignored or rejected. Thessa's feathers flattened against her body, a sign of deep distress. They are creating a rival alliance. They are creating an alliance of equals, Fennec corrected. From what our contacts report, humans chair no special committees, claim no additional votes, demand no tribute. Every member species has identical rights and obligations. It is everything we claim the Council represented, but actually implemented. Over the following weeks, the situation deteriorated further. New Terra closed its borders to Council citizens, citing security concerns. Mars Orbital Complex denied docking rights to Council vessels, a purely legal action under existing treaties that nonetheless cut off a major trade hub. Earth Space Control stopped responding to Council hails entirely, maintaining only automated systems that redirected Council ships to designated remote stations. Every action was legal, every action was polite, every action sent the same unmistakable message. Council representatives were no longer welcome in human space. Refugee ships began arriving from Council worlds, carrying humans and human-allied aliens who no longer felt safe in Council territory. Earth welcomed them all, processing asylum requests within days rather than the months Council bureaucracy typically required. Images of humans embracing refugees from Council persecution spread across galactic networks, painting the Council as oppressors and humanity as liberators. The intelligence reports grew more alarming. Massive construction projects in human space suggested military buildup. New shipyards appeared in 3 systems. Research facilities expanded at unprecedented rates. Most concerning, humanity had made contact with the Dominion, an isolated empire that rivaled the Council in military strength and had maintained hostile neutrality toward Council expansion for decades. Thessa called a closed session of senior Council members. The debate lasted 18 hours. Drennick maintained that any conciliatory gesture would show weakness. Coral argued their economies could not sustain the separation. Arvis warned that military options were becoming increasingly impossible. Fennec simply presented numbers that showed Council influence shrinking daily. The vote to send an envoy ended in deadlock. Before they could break the tie, new intelligence arrived that changed everything. Humanity and the Dominion had signed a formal diplomatic recognition treaty. The 2 powers were in active negotiations for a mutual defense pact. The chamber fell silent. Everyone present understood the implications. If humanity allied with the Dominion, the balance of galactic power would shift fundamentally. The Council would no longer be the dominant force in their region of space. Worse, they would face a coalition of their greatest rival and the species they had just tried to subjugate. "We need to reopen communication," Thessa said quietly. "We need to do it now before this situation becomes irreversible." For once, even Drennick did not argue. He simply sat in his chair, scales dull with stress, staring at the intelligence reports that showed his political gamble failing spectacularly. Humanity had walked away, and in their absence, the carefully constructed edifice of Council power was beginning to crack. The medical ward on Kellen. Prime smelled of antiseptic and desperation. Dr. Ives moved between patients with the mechanical efficiency that came from rationing limited supplies. The pharmacy stockroom held enough human-manufactured medications for perhaps another week. After that, thousands of patients would face interruption in treatments that kept them alive. Kellen physiology required very specific pharmaceutical compounds that only human laboratories produced in sufficient quantity and purity. 3 other species in Council space faced similar dependencies. For 30 years, this had never been a problem. Human medical exports had been reliable, affordable, and of exceptional quality. Now those shipments had stopped, and no alternative suppliers existed. "How long?" Ives asked her assistant, knowing the answer but needing to hear it spoken. 6 days, the assistant replied. "Maybe 7 if we cut dosages, but that risks complications." Ives nodded and returned to her patients. She could not fix the political disaster that had created this crisis. She could only treat the sick for as long as supplies lasted. Cross-council space, similar scenes played out in different contexts. On Avaris, Thessa's homeworld, agricultural yields dropped 30% as farms struggled to replace human fertilizer compounds. Riots broke out in the capital when food prices doubled in a week. The planetary governor declared a state of emergency and imposed rationing. On the industrial world of Kelmer, factories shut down assembly lines because human-manufactured precision components were no longer available. Unemployment reached 20% in a month. The council chamber had become a battlefield of recriminations. Thessa and Drennick traded accusations across the floor. Economic delegates demanded military solutions. Military delegates refused to commit forces. Member species threatened withdrawal if the human situation was not resolved immediately. "This is your fault," Thessa's voice cut through the chaos, directed at Drennick. "Your aggressive stance drove them away." "My stance," Drennick roared back. "You were the one who presented those terms. You signed off on every demand. Because you and your faction insisted humanity needed to be controlled." Thessa's feathers stood on end, a threat display her species had not used in formal settings for centuries. "I warned that we were overreaching. You assured me they had no choice but to comply." Ambassador Pellies, generally considered the most diplomatic member of the council, raised his hands for calm. "Assigning blame changes nothing. We need solutions. I propose we send an envoy to Earth with revised terms, something that addresses their concerns while maintaining council authority." The vote was contentious but passed. Pellies volunteered to lead the mission, spending 2 weeks in transit to Sol System preparing a proposal he believed might salvage the relationship. The revised terms reduced territorial demands from 40% to 20% of colonies. Oversight facilities would serve in advisory capacity rather than administrative control. Fleet reductions lowered to 50%. Genetic modification restrictions removed entirely. Pellies considered it a genuine compromise. He failed to understand that from humanity's perspective, any demand for concessions was unacceptable. Earth orbital control made him wait 3 days before granting a meeting. Not with Ambassador Ryland or any senior human diplomat, but with a junior official named Harris. The meeting location was a sterile conference room on a remote station, deliberately chosen to show how little priority humanity placed on council outreach. Harris listened to Pellies present the revised proposal for 20 minutes. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, and gave no indication of his thoughts. When Pellies finished, Harris consulted his tablet briefly before delivering what was clearly a prepared statement. "Thank you for traveling this distance, Ambassador Pellies. I will ensure your proposal reaches the appropriate decision-makers." Harris paused, his expression professionally neutral. "However, I am authorized to provide preliminary feedback. The Council continues to frame this situation as a negotiation where humanity must surrender elements of our sovereignty in exchange for peace. Humanity has never threatened war. We simply refuse to submit to authority we never consented to." Pellies tried to interject, but Harris continued. "You present your revised terms as compromise, reducing demands from 40% of our colonies to 20%. From our perspective, you are offering to take less than you initially wanted, but still demanding we surrender what we built with our own resources on worlds you previously deemed worthless." "The Council must maintain some oversight," Pellies argued. "Humanity's rapid expansion destabilizes the careful balance we have maintained." "Then maintain your balance in Council space," Harris replied. "We claim no authority over you. Do not claim authority over us. We reject these terms and any terms that assume Council superiority over humanity. We will engage with the Council when you are ready to treat us as equals, not before." The meeting ended after 20 minutes. Pellies returned to his ship stunned by the complete reversal of dynamics. In every previous interaction, humans had sought Council approval, Council markets, Council recognition. Now they seemed genuinely indifferent to what the Council thought or offered. His report to the Council caused uproar. Drennick called him weak for not pressing harder. Thessa accused him of mishandling the approach. Coral demanded to know why humans refuse to be reasonable. They are being perfectly reasonable from their position, Peli said tiredly. We are the ones being unreasonable by expecting them to accept subordinate status. They have moved on, they do not need us anymore, and they know it. While the council argued, the exodus continued. 4 more species signed agreements with humanity's growing Concordance Alliance. 2 were actually council members, announcing their intention to leave within the year. The council's structure began fracturing along economic lines, species dependent on human trade versus those less affected. Both groups blamed each other for the crisis. Stock markets on council core worlds crashed as investors fled to human-aligned economic zones. Scientists and engineers emigrated to human space, where research facilities offered better funding and fewer restrictions. Universities watched their prestige collapse as human institutions stopped recognizing council degrees. The soft power humanity had wielded was now visible only in its absence. Border incidents with hostile non-council species increased sharply. Without human intelligence sharing, council forces found themselves ambushed repeatedly. Small territorial losses mounted into significant strategic setbacks. Defense budgets skyrocketed trying to compensate for the missing human capabilities. 3 months after the walkout, intelligence brought news that paralyzed the council. Humanity had opened formal embassies with 16 species, creating a comprehensive alternative to council-based galactic order. The Concordance, as they called it, offered everything the council claimed to provide, but with genuine equality between members. Every species, regardless of size or military strength, held identical voting rights. Fennec presented economic projections showing council GDP would contract 20% over the next year. Arvis warned that military capabilities had degraded to the point where they could not effectively defend all member territories. Thessa watched her political career crumble as her homeworld recalled her in disgrace, replacing her with a hardliner who promised to take a firmer stance. Yet the firmest stance in the galaxy meant nothing when the other side had stopped listening. Humanity was not posturing or bluffing. They had genuinely moved on, building new relationships, new institutions, new frameworks for galactic cooperation that did not include the Council. In the end, the Council faced a truth that shattered decades of assumptions. They needed humanity far more than humanity needed them. And by the time they understood this, humanity had found others who would treat them as partners rather than subjects. The age of council dominance was ending, not with war or dramatic collapse, but with simple irrelevance. Species were choosing the concordance over the council, choosing equality over hierarchy, choosing humanity's vision of the galaxy over the council's. And the council, trapped in chambers of their own making, could only watch their influence fade. Drennick's private quarters overlooked the council chambers through floor-to-ceiling windows. He stood there now, watching delegates arrive for another emergency session. His political gambit had succeeded beyond his initial plans. Thessa was gone, replaced by someone more aligned with his views. 3 other moderate voices had lost their seats. He now commanded the council through a coalition of hardliners who believed strength meant domination. The cost of that success sat heavy on his shoulders. 7 species had officially left the council. 12 more threatened departure. The economic situation bordered on catastrophic. But Drennick had not climbed to power by accepting defeat. If humanity wanted conflict, he would give them conflict they could not ignore. The emergency session convened with 37 delegates instead of the original 52. Each empty seat represented a species that had chosen the concordance over the council. Drennick took his position at the center podium, scales gleaming under harsh lights. The time for weakness has passed. His voice boomed through the chamber. Humanity has declared economic war on the council through their so-called concordance. They have stolen our members, undermined our trade, and broken the galactic order we spent 3 centuries building. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembled delegates. Drennick had carefully selected those present, ensuring only loyalists attended this particular session. I propose emergency powers be granted to this body, allowing us to act decisively without the endless debates that have paralyzed our response. Drennick continued. We need strong, centralized leadership to counter the human threat. The vote passed 43-8. Moderates who objected lacked the numbers to prevent it. Within hours, the council had transformed from a deliberative body into something resembling a military dictatorship with Drennick at its head. His first act was to issue a formal ultimatum to humanity, delivered through every available channel, broadcast across galactic networks, impossible to ignore. The message demanded humanity return to negotiations within 30 days, threatened sanctions against any species trading with humans, promised military action if the Concordance continued its expansion. Drennick believed the threat would work. Surely humans would back down from credible use of force. Surely the smaller species allied with humanity would abandon them rather than face Council military power. The human response came within 6 hours, not from Ambassador Ryland or any diplomatic office, but directly from President HFY. Broadcast from Earth to every corner of known space, Drennick watched from his office as the human leader addressed the galaxy. HFY was an elderly woman, her hair white, her face lined with age, but her voice carried absolute authority. Citizens of the galaxy, I address you today not as President of Earth alone, but as someone concerned about the future we are building together. She reviewed the negotiation history methodically, displaying the original council demands for all to see: 40% territorial surrender, genetic restrictions, oversight facilities, fleet reductions. The revised terms that still demanded submission, the peaceful human withdrawal and Council's subsequent threats. The Galactic Council has chosen to frame our refusal as aggression. HFY's tone remained measured. They claim we have declared economic war by choosing our trading partners freely. They threaten military action because species choose to join our concordance rather than their council. They demand we submit or face consequences. She paused, letting silence stretch across the broadcast. Humanity seeks no conflict. We seek only dignity. We will not be threatened into submission. Any sanctions against our friends will be considered acts of war. Any military action against human interests will be met with full response. We stand with all free peoples against tyranny. The final statement hit like a shockwave. Any species seeking partnership based on equality rather than subordination, contact Earth. Our doors remain open. Our hands remain extended in friendship. We will not abandon those who choose freedom. The broadcast ended. Drennick stood frozen in his office, scales pale with rage and fear. HFY had not just rejected his ultimatum, she had turned it against him, made him look like a tyrant threatening peaceful neighbors. Worse, she had opened the floodgates for more defections. Within 24 hours, public opinion across Council worlds shifted dramatically. Protests erupted on multiple planets, citizens demanding their governments negotiate with humans rather than threaten them. Media outlets began questioning Council leadership. Interviews with refugees from Council space painted humanity as liberators and the Council as oppressors. Drennick called for military assessment. Defense Coordinator Arvis delivered the briefing in private, his forearms gesturing at holographic displays showing force compositions. Our previous intelligence underestimated human fleet strength by approximately 40%. Their military technology has advanced significantly. The Dominion Alliance means we face a 2-to-1 numerical disadvantage. Additionally, Concordance member species control key strategic choke points. What are you saying? Drennick demanded. I am saying that military action against humanity would result in catastrophic defeat, Arvis replied bluntly. We cannot win this war. The economic news was equally devastating. The human-aligned trading bloc had formalized into what they called the Concordance, a comprehensive alternative to council-based commerce. 20 species signed the founding charter. Their combined economy now rivaled the Councils. More importantly, they offered membership to any species with only one requirement: commitment to sovereign equality. Drennick's ultimatum had backfired completely. He could not back down without losing his position. He could not follow through without losing the war. He could not maintain sanctions because council members were ignoring them. 6 council members announced they were opening back-channel talks with humanity. They did so publicly, defying his authority. He lacked the power to punish them all without triggering complete council collapse. The real crisis came on day 28 of his 30-day ultimatum. Intelligence reported hostile activity along the council's border. The Krell Empire, an aggressive power that had been quiet for decades, was massing forces. They smelled weakness and prepared to exploit it. Arvis brought the news personally. Previous council security depended heavily on human intelligence sharing and rapid response capabilities. Without that, the Krell see opportunity. They are positioning for invasion of our outer territories. "How long until they attack?" Drennick asked. "Days, perhaps a week," Arvis replied. "We cannot defend effectively without human support." "Then request human assistance," Drennick snapped. "They will not respond to my request," Arvis said quietly. "Not after your ultimatum, not after threatening them and their allies. If we want their help, you must ask personally, and you must offer them something they want." "I will not beg." Drennick's scales flushed dark with fury. "Then the council falls," Arvis stated flatly. "The Krell will take our outer worlds, member species will flee to the Concordance for protection, the council will fracture completely. Your pride or our survival, choose." Drennick stood at his window, looking down at the chamber where he had seized power. Everything he had built, every political maneuver, every calculated risk had led to this moment. He had tried to force humanity into submission and instead had driven them away, had threatened them and made them stronger, had attempted to isolate them and isolated the council instead. His choice was no choice at all. Swallow his pride or watch everything collapse. With shaking hands, he activated the emergency channel to Earth, the one he had sworn never to use, the one that would connect him directly to human leadership. Whether they would even answer, he did not. No. The emergency transmission crawled through 17 layers of intermediary contacts before reaching Earth. The Council had burned their direct communication privileges months ago. Now their urgent pleas for help had to route through neutral parties, each adding hours to the delivery time. Defense Coordinator Arvis had sent the request 4 days ago. 4 days while the Krell Empire positioned invasion fleets along Council borders. 4 days while Council forces conducted fighting retreats and suffered mounting casualties. President Akoi reviewed the message in her Earth office overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Beside her stood Admiral West and Ambassador Ryland. Both waited silently while she read Arvis's carefully worded request 3 times. "He is asking for military alliance," West observed. "Not assistance, not aid, but formal alliance status." "Because he understands the difference," Ryland added. "Assistance is charity from superior to inferior. Alliance is partnership between equals. They have finally learned the lesson." Akoi nodded slowly. "The question is whether we help them despite everything they have done, or let them face the consequences of their choices." "The Krell will not stop at Council borders," West said. "If they break through, they will threaten everyone in this region, including our allies." "And thousands of innocent civilians will die," Ryland added. "People who had no say in their government's decisions." Akoi stood and walked to the window. Somewhere out there, Council worlds were preparing for invasion. Mothers were hiding children. Fathers were joining militia forces. Ordinary people were paying the price for their leaders' arrogance. She had not wanted this. Humanity had walked away seeking only to be left alone. But the galaxy did not offer clean separation from problems. "Send response," she finally said. "We will help, but with conditions." The message reached Council space within hours. President Akoi appeared on screens across member worlds, her elderly face calm but resolute. "The Concordance has received your request for military alliance. We agree to provide assistance defending Council territories from Krell aggression. However, this assistance comes with requirements." She listed them methodically. Public admission of wrongdoing in the original negotiations. formal apology to humanity, restructuring of the council as a federation of equals. Rather than a hierarchy, equal voting rights for all species regardless of size or military strength. And finally, Drennick must resign from leadership. The conditions landed like hammer blows. Watching from his office, Drennick felt his world collapsing, everything he had built destroyed. His political career ended. But as he prepared a defiant rejection, Arvis entered without knocking. "Krell fleet will arrive in 3 days," Arvis said flatly. "Without human support, we fall in 5. Your pride or our survival, this is the last time I ask." Drennick looked at the four-armed warrior who had served the council faithfully for 40 years, saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of knowing that billions of lives depended on this moment. Slowly, Drennick's shoulders sagged. He had gambled everything and lost. Refusing now would make him responsible for the deaths that followed. "Prepare my resignation statement," he said quietly. The broadcast went out 2 hours later. Drennick's resignation was brief and bitter, but it was done. Thessa, recalled from disgrace, returned to deliver the formal apology on behalf of the council. She stood before cameras with her feathers dull from stress. "The Galactic Council extends its deepest apologies to humanity." Her voice shook slightly. "We approached negotiations with imperial ambitions rather than partnership. We demanded submission rather than cooperation. We treated you as subjects rather than equals. We were wrong, and our arrogance has cost both our peoples dearly." She announced the Council's reformation as a democratic federation. Equal votes for all members, no special privileges, no mandatory concessions, just mutual defense and mutual benefit. Then she made the formal request. "We ask humanity and the Concordance to help us defend our worlds from Krell aggression, not as a favor from superior to inferior, but as allies standing together against tyranny." The human response was immediate. Fleet Admiral West assumed operational command of the defense. Human warships jumped into Council space within hours. The Dominion sent supporting forces. Concordance members contributed what vessels they could. A massive combined fleet assembled at the Council border facing the incoming Krell invasion. The battle began as the Krell fleet crossed into Council territory. They expected easy victory against a weakened, divided Council. Instead, they met humanity's full. Military power coordinated with Council and Allied forces. The engagement lasted 12 hours. Human tactical coordination proved superior. The combined fleet fought as a unified force. Krell ships broke formation and retreated under devastating counterattack. The invasion was crushed. Celebrations erupted across Council worlds. Humans were hailed as saviors, but humanity did not gloat or demand tribute. They simply helped repair damaged stations and returned casualties home. Admiral West worked alongside Council officers as equals. Human medical ships treated wounded from all species without preference. The Federation Charter was signed 3 weeks later. 30 species, including all surviving Council members. Humans took 1 seat among many, claiming no special status. Thessa became the first Federation speaker. Ryland served as human ambassador. Drennick, in exile on a remote world, watched broadcasts of the signing ceremony and saw the galaxy moving forward without him. At the dedication ceremony, Thessa addressed the new Federation Assembly. "We thought strength meant dominance. Humanity taught us strength means protecting the weak. We thought unity meant conformity. Humanity showed us unity means respecting differences. We learned the hard way that you cannot force someone to be your friend. You can only earn that friendship through respect and equality." Trade resumed under fair terms. Joint projects restarted as genuine collaborations. Former Council species adjusted to equal status. Some struggled with lost privileges. Most felt relief at authentic partnership. Technology flowed freely. Economies recovered. Security improved with coordinated defense. 1 year after the walkout, Ryland stood on Earth at a memorial dedicated to those lost during the crisis. Thousands had died in medical shortages, border raids, and economic collapse. The price of Council arrogance and human principle. He placed flowers at the base of the monument. The inscription read simply, "They walked away from subjugation toward dignity. Some prices must be paid. Some principles cannot be compromised." Ryland reflected on the path that had led here. Humanity had not sought dominance or revenge, had only wanted respect. They had been willing to sacrifice economic ties for sovereignty, willing to walk away from any deal that denied their dignity. And when the Council finally learned to offer genuine partnership, humanity had helped even those who wronged them. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Humans would walk away from any relationship built on inequality, no matter the cost, no matter the sacrifice. They would rather stand alone with dignity than thrive under submission. And paradoxically, that unwillingness to accept subordination had earned them more genuine allies than the Council's centuries of dominance ever achieved. Peace without respect was not peace. It was just delayed conflict. Humanity had chosen the harder path, had endured isolation and sacrifice, and earned authentic friendship in return. The Federation thrived not because humans demanded it, but because they had shown the galaxy what true partnership looked like. As Ryland walked away from the memorial, he thought about the council chamber where this had started. Drennick's arrogant laughter, Thessa's dismissive gestures, their absolute certainty that humanity had no choice. They had been so wrong. Humans always had a choice, and they chose dignity every time. That choice had changed the galaxy forever.